Hello, everyone. Welcome to eCoffee with Experts. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. And today on this episode, I have Jonti Bolles with me. Now, after a background in finance architecture as an assistant professor, Jonti migrated to digital teaching and began in SEO over 16 years ago. Currently still enamored with exploring the relationship between organic and paid search while working in various locations around the United States, mostly from an RV. Jonti, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Great to have you.
Matt, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun. I can't wait.
Hey, awesome. So, hey, you've had an interesting journey so far. What's it like working from an RV? Do you travel a lot, and how does that work out for you?
Well, I set up my agency as a remote agency about 6 years ago, maybe longer now that I think about it. But I was in Houston, Texas, and we realized that we didn't want to be competitive as a new agency. I needed to differentiate myself. And I set us up as a remote agency back then, so my people didn't have to fight Houston traffic. About 2 years into that, I realized that we really were remote, and I didn't have to spend another hot, hurricaney, mosquito-y summer in Texas if I didn't want to. So we sold things in Houston, bought an RV, and we became remote about 4 or 5 years ago before it was cool.
Wow.
And we've been working remote ever since.
Wow. So you were remote before the pandemic even happened. You were already set up.
Yes, we were.
Employees.
Yes, we were.
Did you set up like your systems and processes like to handle remote people? Like how did that happen?
So we've always been remote. We've worked only with onshore people. But, and so we did figure that out. And I had the luxury of doing that, in Houston for a year or two before we actually left. So it gave us the chance to kind of test those things. Then as we took them on the road, it was kind of fun. We had to learn to navigate, being connected. And so at one point, I think we had 4 hotspots, which was, from several different carriers just to make sure we could stay connected and have data no matter where we were.
Oh yeah, that would be a challenge, wouldn't it? If you're in the middle, of Arizona somewhere.
It was. So we were remote, but we weren't entirely off grid. And then the nice thing is when the pandemic started to interrupt some businesses, we had been through that and we knew it. And our clients, that some of them were having some challenges, we were able to be stable and be the calm. Okay, this is how you do this. And so for a moment there, we transferred from just being an SEO or digital agency to actually being a business process and helping our clients. And it was nice to see that, be able to give that back.
Yeah, because there's a huge amount of work involved in transitioning to doing things remotely rather than everybody working from a physical office.
Exactly. And, now we've all seen that, the experiment has been working and everybody is really enjoying that for the most part. And the funny part is we're doing remote, but we're now more of I would call digital nomads. We enjoyed RV traveling and seeing, United States and most of the Southwest from Texas to California, all the way up to Vermont. So back and forth. But right now we're back in Texas and we've learned that we like to stay in one place a little bit longer, but we're not tethered to any one place.
Yeah. I got to talk to my wife about doing that because I'm very interested in doing that because my job's remote. I don't have to be tied to one place in order to do it. But anyway, that's so exciting. So when did you first know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Like I know I read your background a little bit, but have you always wanted to own an agency and help clients, or how did that come about?
Not at all. No? Not at all. I've gone through several careers, and from architecture to finance to teaching as a professor for architecture. And when I was teaching architecture, I was got involved in technology as we were kind of transitioning from pencil, paper, ink pens to computers. And I realized at that time that how important and impactful technology was going to be to all business. I stepped out of teaching and architecture and started working with some companies and learning educational pieces, developing software. Still not an entrepreneur, but I did go to work for a couple of small nonprofits that were very entrepreneur based, even though they were nonprofits. And I saw the many hats that you had to wear. And I was like, oh, this is fun. You never get bored. You never do the same thing more than once.
Yeah.
And then I realized that was where I started understanding the entrepreneurial spirit, that I needed that engagement, because I used to tease that I had a 7-year itch for careers. I would stay about 7 years in finance or 7 years in architecture. And now I've been in SEO for well over 16, 17 years. And I say that I can stay in it because it keeps changing around me. And also the same thing with entrepreneurship, right? You know, there are so many hats that you wear. So I think I thrive and need that little bit of, I want to solve problems, and I don't want to do the same thing every day.
Yeah, absolutely. That, you know, being an entrepreneur, that's interesting for sure. So how you've been doing SEO for 16 years. Well, I think I'll leave that question for later, because so what do you enjoy most about being an entrepreneur then?
I do enjoy the most of having probably the ups and downs, the pitfalls, right? So I love the control of my own destiny, you might say.
Yeah.
And that's kind of such a false narrative too, because it relies on, you know, my people, my clients, everybody else. But I do love that those choices are mine, to whether to succeed or fail. And that autonomy is something that I've had the advantage of learning from some really, really amazing business mentors. So I wasn't making all of these decisions on my own. I have a lot of background to rely upon from different areas, but still being able to go and test those yourself, I think, is the thing I love the most about entrepreneurship. I get to steer the ship, but I also have to take into account that, you know, the ship is maybe setting the direction, but everybody else is the one that makes the ship actually run.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Hey, in regards to mentors, how can you tell me about one of the mentors who's made a biggest impact, and an example of that's helped you out?
Absolutely. So one of the mentors that I had that was probably the hugest impact on my business understanding as an entrepreneur was a gentleman that actually, because of him, I probably have this company. So I worked at an agency called Schipul, the web marketing company, for many years. And they went from 5 to about 20 people. And then I joined them we went from 20 to about 50 people.
Oh, wow.
So there was some significant growth over, you know, several years there. But seeing that lesson of, you know, what got you to one place won't get you to the next. And also learning to, you know, way back then, there were, you know, some guiding principles, which was fail fast, right?
Yeah.
And bad news has to travel faster than good news. So, you know, we brought people into the company and learning how he approached training and education and just really sets a stage for me to understand that tactical is not the only way to grow people. You have to give people business ideas and strategy and let them explore all the things that are not even related to your business. You know, we had a book budget where we could order books that had nothing to do with our career path. But if we were learning something, then it was valuable. So seeing the idea of education and training, and then, you know, making some choices, and sometimes they didn't all turn out well for that company, and sometimes they did, but we always were able to pivot because we had the right people. That as a mentor was invaluable. That company that will lead into that company was both a software company and an agency, and they decided to be just a software company. And I had worked with them as both manager of their SEM department and also as operations at one point. And working with operations and finance and people, I loved it because we were growing, but I missed search engine optimization, right? You never quite get over your first love.
Yeah, that's true.
And as they were, right? And as they were going to become a software company and not an agency, realized that they needed to transfer their clients to someplace that was safe and trustworthy. And I made a business decision at that point to become an entrepreneur and took that book of business. And that's how I started White Hat Ops. So it was a split off from that company. And all of a sudden I was an entrepreneur. And never looked back.
Oh, wow. And that was back in 2014.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's amazing. Is that software company still around?
Yes, it's called Tendency, TENDENCI. They do a CMS system specifically for nonprofits.
Okay. So what are some hard choices you've had to make to get where you are today?
I think some of the hardest choices have been when to bring on people and grow and not.
Yeah. That is hard.
Everybody talks about, you should grow. You should bring on more clients. You should, everybody thinks if you're not growing and growing fast, that you're not succeeding. And I've actually, for the last year, we had, I think like many agencies, the possibility of some exponential growth in the pandemic, because all of a sudden the world became digital and everybody wanted to be found online.
Yeah.
And so we could have grown really, really fast, and we did grow some, but the hardest choice was to say no to some potential prospects and clients because we weren't ready, or not to hire people and move too fast. Because, again, what will get you to one place won't get you to the next. And I knew I didn't actually have those processes in place at that point. I do now, but we're going to continue to grow slow.
Yeah. Were there certain clients that came along that you're like, this isn't the right fit?
Yes. So with SEO has so many different aspects of it. And I think this is the lesson I'm still learning, is that I'm supposed to niche down, right? If you talk to anybody, they say, oh, you should niche down. You should really focus your positioning and, who your target market and your client is. And we've done that to some aspect. And if I was doing it right, I would pick a industry and do just SEO for a certain size company. But I have been unable to do that. And we still manage SEO, pay-per-click, and analytics for our clients. So I know that's probably not the way I should be doing it, but it's the way I love it because I find them inextricably linked. I've turned away e-commerce clients. I've turned away social media advertising clients. I've turned away some clients that I didn't agree with their business processes because I didn't think we could be successful. Yeah.
So you were able to identify those things and then just say, hey, this isn't the right fit. Maybe you can find somebody else.
Yes. So we really focus on, B2B nonprofits, associations, organizations. And I've fortunately enough been able to find enough other trustworthy clients and out there that we can refer work back and forth. So when I find something that's just not a good fit, or if it's, even probably the hardest or worst case is somebody that you start working with and then realize it's not a good fit. That's been probably the hardest decision, is to let that kind of type of client go.
Yeah, for sure. Breakups are never easy, even if it's a business to business. Is there any advice you'd give to someone who needs to break up with a client? Like how I can go about it?
With grace.
Grace. Yeah.
With grace. And
it's not you, it's me.
It's not you, it's me. It's not working for, this is our hopes. We're not seeing that, or, our people don't have the right skill set to meet your needs or your timeline. And then find an exit that's graceful for them. Is that, that they need something different than what you're able to provide. And, if you're interested, I don't want to run your business for you, but here's 1, 2, or 3 options that we can connect you with that might be a good fit. Yeah.
That's always good to exit with grace in those situations. How do you hired remote people, but so when you're looking for talent, and obviously if you're remote based, you've already figured this out. So this is to me very interesting. Like how do you what's the word I'm looking for? Filter, for lack of a better word, I'm sorry, through the people to get the right candidates? Because working remote is totally different than working in an office. You're a little more accountable. It's way easier to watch Netflix at home and sit on the couch and pretend you're working. And every CEO is freaking out that that's what their employees are doing. So just how did you develop a process for like finding the right team member that's going to fit in the right position in the right place in your business, so you don't hire the wrong person that screws things up for you?
There's no magic beans. I wish there were.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll start with that. But I would say it's not terribly different than what I used to do in office, because like I said, I think I also had the advantage of working as an operations manager for 2 years in an agency, and it gave me a really good skill set there to understand and ask the right questions of people. And you still never get it right. And there are people that I wish we would have hired that we didn't, that I didn't think was the right fit at the time. They've gone on to do amazing things. And some people that I hired that didn't work out, and we've had to part ways. What I've found is that I have some great questions that I will ask. And it's not just the questions, but it's more the spirit of what do you do to keep yourself knowledgeable and invest in yourself for training?
Yeah.
So one of my questions for someone, every person I talk to is, what is the last money, real money, that you invested in yourself that your employer didn't pay for or require?
Yeah, that's a
I
good
don't care
question.
if it's going to a gym, if it's going to a conference, if it's some course you took on your own, but when did you last spend money on yourself and put your skin in the game?
To develop
and if they
yourself.
Can't answer that, then they're not developing themselves, and they're not probably going to be a good fit for the motivation you need to continue in this business that keeps changing and learning, and
that makes so much sense.
Accountability to yourself to do the work.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. For any future agency owners listening to this, to ask that question of any future hires. That's, because if they're not investing in themselves, then it's a pretty big red flag. Like, I don't even want to say how much money I've invested in my own training. So it's a lot though.
Exactly.
And as probably you have, I've invested like high 5 figures in over the last 15 years of learning.
And if it doesn't, money is the big tell there, but if it's, we're not even talking about coaching or anything like that. Right. Yeah. But like I said, even if it's a gym membership, that's, something that you're spending on yourself to improve yourself. And it doesn't always have to be money, but if it is just a book or a conference or, a course, then that's huge.
Yeah. So do you think how important do you think it is to do that then? For instance, Brian Tracy, in one of his books I listened to, this guy dedicated investing 10% of his income into personal development and learning. And it got to the point where he was making so much money, he had to hire a personal assistant and all these other things. So I guess from my perspective, the question I'm asking is, how important do you think it is, like on a scale of 1 to 10, and what are some ways that people can do those things that you found from your experience?
Well, I'll say one, it's not for everybody. There are people that are comfortable doing the same thing and in a comfortable role and safe role, and they can become the best at that.
Yeah.
And I respect that just as much.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's my first caveat, right? So that not everybody has to take the same path, but if you are on the path of in a industry or personal development that you want to keep growing in your career wise, then I'll talk just about career, right? Then I do think it's hugely important. And that can, we used to say about, you hear phrases tossed around, a continuous learner or polymath or things like that.
Yeah.
Not everybody is that, but when you are, if you're not investing in yourself, then I think it's not even, it's equivalent to a stagnation. You're just, you're going to be so unfulfilled and unhappy. So I think you have to really become your best self.
Absolutely.
So scale of 1 to 10 for the right person, 10.
Yeah. You know what I do? I watch training videos every day for half an hour on digital marketing or something else. And I do that through LinkedIn Learning because my public library offers free access to LinkedIn Learning with a free library card. Nice. So I donate to the library because of the value of that. I mean, that's a $600 a year savings for me. So I'm happy to donate, even $20 a month, or whatever, to the library. A card used to be $12, but I'll donate $20 a year. If everybody donated $20 a year, they'd probably have a lot more funds to do a lot more things. But that's what I find. Like for me, I'm going to eat lunch anyway. Would I love to have lunch with someone? Of course, but I can't afford to do that every day. And neither is it practical. So rather than just doing nothing and sitting there eating lunch, I watch training videos on LinkedIn, and whether it's about SEO or PPC or the various different courses they have on there, I find that's hugely beneficial.
No, that's what I said. It doesn't have to cost money. There are so many places now, that we can learn. And I also will often say, back to hiring, if I can find someone that knows what cold soup or soggy cereal tastes like, they're also a candidate for hire because they sat down at lunch to watch something and got so engrossed that the soup got cold or their cereal got soggy. That's the person I want to hire.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Hey, so you have this journey, by the way, like a background in financing architecture and all those things, an assistant professor, but how did you, I know you touched on it just a little bit, but how did you get started in digital marketing? Is there a story behind that? Like, did you type in how to search, how to make money online on Google, or how did it come about?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking. So I was working for nonprofits, and the nonprofit was kind of in working with at-risk youth and education, and kind of with it, and trying to support and change some things in our education system.
Yeah.
And since it was a startup, they had some heavy hitters that they were trying to compete against. And so scrappy entrepreneurs were trying everything they could to find their place in the market and grow. And so I was, back then, it was title tags made a difference.
Oh yeah.
And we were trying to figure out why how they could be more, since it was a digital tool that they were selling. The website was a really big deal. And the owners of that nonprofit were kind of digital and tech savvy. Mm-hmm. And we became tasked and enamored with the idea of, hey, SEO can help us win against some of these larger brands. And someone pointed out to me that, well, your homepage title tag says home, and your other title tags aren't really different either. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And this was back in 2005. 2005. And I started digging in, like you said, watching videos. I'm pretty sure there was cold soup involved. And, and they allowed me to go down that rabbit hole. And as a nonprofit, we started developing and learning about SEO, and I saw it move the needle for them. It made a difference. The phone rang a little bit more. And I was like, oh, well, this is amazing. And all my friends at that time used to call me anyway, middle of the day, middle of the night, interrupt me at work. Hey, I'm trying to find something on the internet. I need my web monkey. Can you help me find this? And I would just tell them the search phrases. And so apparently part of my ninja skill at the time was my brain thought like a search engine.
Oh, wow.
So
that's very interesting.
At that point, I didn't know it was you can make money at it. I was looking at all these other ways, project management and all these other things I could do just to help with the nonprofit. And then I discovered SEO, and I was like, oh, there's this thing, and you can get paid for it, and it's what I love to do. Oh my goodness! And so I really dove in, and I guess when you find something that really clicks, then that's when you do excel at it. And that's when I went on to. That's how I got started in digital marketing.
Wow. So what do you love about SEO the most? I love SEO. I mean, I love everything about marketing, but what do you love about it the most about SEO? Besides, I know you don't do social media marketing, so obviously you love SEO more than anything, more than those things. I
do. And I think I probably spent more time the last year in analytics and digital strategy than anything. But that's all because we have to understand the impact of SEO, right?
Yeah.
So I think what I love the most is, we mentioned that I had a background in architecture and teaching. So I think the thing that I learned from architecture is that architecture is built at its best, to lift the human spirit. We walk into a building or a museum, and the building showcases what's there, and it's a creative design aspect. But what most people don't realize is in architecture, there's a life safety issue. There's a very technical piece of architecture that building has to stand up, not fall down, and not kill people or withstand storms. So there's this creative and technical side to it. And I loved that piece. And it's a whole nother story why I left architecture. But I find that in SEO, there is a art and science to it. There is the technical, it's got to be found by search crawlers. It's got to, have all the technical pieces to it. And it has to have a good user experience. It has to, at its best, deliver a marketing message and uplift and change a business for the good. Absolutely. Or support it. So being able to not be pigeonholed that I have to be just technical or just creative, I think is the thing I love about SEO.
I would totally agree.
It's both content and technical.
Yeah. You have to come up. So, I totally agree with you. The two sides of it, the creative and the technical, is what, because you have to be able to come up with unique ideas so how have you seen SEO change over the last 16 years?
It's definitely much more data driven. It was a little bit of Wild West cowboy, when it first getting started out. Obviously there were way more search engines than just Google. so now I think are finally realizing, I call it a little bit of our mistake is, we talk about kids, when we teach kids, we teach them to the test. Well, I think for a while now, we've been doing SEO for Google, even though we say we're doing, the best SEO is for the user, for the content. And we know that, but there's a part of us that also does SEO for the search engine. I don't think that will change drastically, but I think we are seeing a little bit of a rubber band snapback now that we're understanding search is not just Google. Search is across all these different platforms. We talk about search maybe with a capital S, right? Mm-hmm. People look for things now across so many different channels, and understanding that intent and that topic and understanding it. There's so much data available now that I don't have to be as creative as I used to be. We don't have to guess as much. Yes, there's still marketing tests. There's still it depends. But I think what I've seen change is we have the tools and the data-driven opportunities to make decisions now based on really high-quality assumptions.
Yeah, absolutely. What is can you tell me one of your SEO success stories, possibly, if you're allowed to? I don't know if you can't disclose things, or if you can talk about in generalities, but just like an SEO success story. Yeah,
sure. So we do a lot of work white labeling with other agencies, so I don't get to talk about them as much, but I do have some great agencies and things I've worked with. One of our clients was kind of an entrepreneurial startup just before the pandemic, was Mental Health Match, a great tool online. And it's matches, just if you think about a personality match, someone dating online, you go through a lot of questions to kind of find the right match, and you're presented with options to who you might want to reach out to. Well, this was the same thing with trying to help people be able to match and choose their therapist if they needed in a specific modality or place or demographic. And so you could go through a series of questionnaires and things to learn about your personality type and them and fit. Great product and great online tool, and such a need. So I was contacted by the client, and they had at first started out with a beautiful site, but they decided to build entirely on JavaScript.
Oh, okay.
There's that.
Yeah.
We were able to kind of work with them to get some server-side rendering and get some things going. Again, the technical side of things.
Yeah, the technical.
And then we started working on content strategy and how were they going to compete again against some of the much more established players in the mental health field online.
Yeah.
And we started a program of content gap analysis and improving their SEO and a little bit of paid strategy. But we were able to take their organic strategy from a local, just starting out in kind of Houston, Texas, to a national presence, obviously with so much support and, great subject matter experts inside their company. We were just, part of but seeing that growth over time is one of those that I'm, most proud of.
That is awesome.
A company doing good, started out locally. They were able to grow in some difficult times, and then seeing both a technical and a content strategy in place that they've gone on to graduate on their own and just be a successful company. It's awesome. It feels great.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I know what you're saying. I'm just, anyway, I don't want to talk about me. So, but I'm thinking of the story of one of my own stories, but anyway, so I shouldn't have got myself off track. You were talking, so what does your SEO process look like then for trying to replicate something like that?
So I have moved to maybe a little bit different. I'm starting to see it bubble up in the SEO world a little bit now, where we've moved to a sprint-based model.
Yeah.
So where we're doing projects, 6 or 8 week sprints. I don't do a recurring, monthly fee anymore. Okay. So that we are, and I've always kind of been, low contract agnostic. I don't feel like we have to get tied into big contracts, but the sprint-based model seems to work really well because depending on an agent, a company's growth, they may need, and their marketing team, they may need some really deep dive expertise for a while. Then they go off and can do that and execute, or we can do it with them or do it for them, or then they may come back. But just trying to figure out some of those months in between. Sometimes it was, it's nice to avoid some of those awkward conversations if they weren't ready to implement and we're waiting on them to implement. So a sprint-based model for us looks like we usually start out with an audit that is, again, a content audit and a technical audit.
Okay.
We, look at, every URL on their existing website and evaluate it for, is it getting impressions? Is it getting sessions? Is it converting? Technically, does it need to be, is it indexed? Does it not need to be indexed? Is it a redirect? Should it be merged with something else? Then we look at it as a content, strategy. Does it need just a little on-page refresh, or does, what does every URL need? It's huge, and it just sets our foundation for everything. Then we move into understanding, I think, topic analysis. I'm a big fan these days of looking at the forest before the trees. Yeah. And making sure we've got the topics right and they're matching what those pages or should be. And then we move down into maybe some of those trees and looking at maybe what key phrases and questions need to be answered. Is it eligible for frequently asked questions or schema? And then we move maybe into a sprint that is more a gap analysis, looking at 4 or 5 competitors. If 3 or 4 of your competitors are writing for this thing and are all ranking for certain topics, and you're not, you have to make a decision. Is that an area you need to be writing and competing on as well and doing better? Or is it one you need to pivot away from? Yeah. So kind of going through those steps, and then wash, rinse, repeat, right? We can add new content. We can continue looking at gaps. We can refresh what's there. And then setting up analytics to measure all that from the very beginning.
You just touched on one of my favorite subjects, which I was going to ask. So before we go there, there's so many follow-up questions I have based on what you're saying. I'm trying to keep it all organized in my head. So
this is fun. It's good.
So for instance, what tools then are some of your favorite tools to use to do all that?
I think I spend more money on tools than I do education.
Yeah, I agree. I know. I talked to one agency owner and said, Matt, we spend $2,000 a month on tools alone.
Yeah, exactly. We have subscriptions to SEM Rush, Hrefs, SE Ranking.
Majestic.
We don't do Majestic. I move into some content things like Market Muse and Phrase and Content Harmony. There's just so many things that we spend money on. And those are just the ones that are off the top of my head.
Yeah. What, just out of curiosity, what role do you think AI is going to play, if any, from your opinion, in SEO and moving forward?
Oh, it's totally going to. So the best quote I've seen so far about AI that really solidified it for me was, as bad as AI is maybe today, that's the worst it will ever be.
Wow.
It's only going to get smarter and better.
Yeah. I can't even think about how it's going to affect SEO. Like, I'm curious to know your thoughts.
So when I look at maybe a content gap analysis that I mentioned earlier in the forest before the trees, I think SEO and understand user journey and helping companies with strategy. And we do this in PPC as well. Yeah. It's what are the areas that you want to promote and across what channel? Clients don't have time to figure that out. Should this be an organic play? Should this be a paid play? Is it both? And then deciding what the value is there. And again, we have so much data that we pay for with tools that we can understand what is the addressable market for them and where they can compete. AI can't figure that out yet because they don't know that person's business model or business objectives or the decisions they have within their, quarterly budgets. So I think as SEO or digital marketers, I'm just going to say digital marketers.
Yeah, sure.
We have to level up our game because AI is just another tool that provides data. It just happens to be moving content around as data. Yeah. But we still have to direct it and understand how to implement that tool and to what strategy it serves.
Yeah.
It doesn't scare me. I think that's what I hear a lot from colleagues that may not be as aware. They're cautious. They're using it. They're already saying, well, is Google using AI or Google saying we can't use AI? I think all that is, again, you're down in the tactical weeds of it. I think we all have to elevate ourselves a little bit and use our years of experience for strategy, because that's where the clients are also suffering.
Yeah. What do you think about like the role of, like, for instance, the role of content generators and AI in regards to SEO? Is it good, bad? Do you think it's going to be used in the future or not used?
Oh, it'll absolutely be used.
Yeah.
But is it any different than links? Right?
Yeah.
People use links for good or bad. We talk about, it's against rules, in terms to buy links, and there are agencies that absolutely do that. Yeah. I've never built into the link building aspect of our business. It's something we've shied away from. I've focused on them more upfront, but it's a tool, and there are times that it absolutely works, and can be a PR drive, or it can be so many other things. I think AI is another tool. It will absolutely be used by SEOs. We have a subscription to Jarvis, and we test it out. We test it with headlines, or we test it with different things. You have to know what these things are out there to figure out where they fit into your tool belt. I think it's good as a training tool. It's a training tool for the AI itself, and it's a training tool for our people. And if you can, and how many times have we seen, I didn't think this headline or this thing would ever work, because that's obviously not matching our customer journey. And if you put it in a test, I'm continually surprised how often I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's amazing. Split testing is so much fun.
So I think AI has its place, and I think we need to use it as a tool, because there are things there, and like I said, as bad as it is, in some cases, that's the worst it'll ever be. So I got to give a little lean on it. We'll keep testing it and use it in cases where it makes sense, and we'll find out what that is.
So you're not afraid to use it to generate content for client sites?
Not as long as there is a final human reader. What I use it more for now is maybe setting an outline structure. We use, if you think about, I love Market Muse. I love Content Harmony. Many of these, they're using machine learning to help develop some of that. Machine learning is one step away from AI. So no, I'm not afraid. Like I said, we are testing it out. Are we a big content generation agency? No. We've always done content briefs first and help with clients, and send those content briefs to subject matter experts. Let them fill in the details, and then we might come back and run it through and scan again with AI to see, all right, how, who matches what's good. Are there things that we can further suggest? Yeah. So I'm not afraid, but we will watch heavily how we use it.
Yeah. I think, like you said, it's like a tool. Links can be bad, or they can be good, or other things like a knife can be used for chopping lettuce, or can be used for something we don't want to talk about. Exactly. I love to cook. So I personally, again, I don't think people are saying, oh, well, Google's going to find out. I'm not going to tell you the URL off on camera, but afterwards I'll tell you. I've used Jarvis to write the entire content for a website that I'm going to rank. And I see absolutely, number one, the amount of money I would have to have paid a content writer to do that. Number two, the amount of time it would have taken. And I cannot see in a million years, number one, the content that this thing has put out for me is unbelievable. I'm like, wow, this is so good. Now, the point I'm trying to make, which I'm agreeing with you, is that I think that if you put out crappy content generated by AI that's garbage, and you put it on your site expecting Google to rank it, and going back to the days of, I can't remember which update we want to call it now, whatever, I can't remember them all. Budget bird or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? It's off the top of my head. Hummingbird and penguin and yada, yada, yada. Whichever one. Penguin,
hummingbird. Yep.
Yeah, penguin, I think, was the one that did target crappy content. So I think that if you use it as a tool with a final human writer, because it's going to speed up productivity. It's going to lower the cost of content creation, speed up productivity, and make things better. So I'm kind of pissed off at Google, frankly, if they're sitting there on their high horse saying that, oh, it's against our, it's spam, it's content spam generated, yet they themselves are using AI. And in my opinion, and also someone also pointed out, it's kind of leveraging the playing field, making it, it's democratizing for some people who English may not be their first language, yet now they can create assets or maybe even things that'll change their lives, websites to create an income, to get out of their situation or whatever, that's better. So I totally agree with you that it's a tool that can be used for good or bad. And I see no way that Google can figure out that a human being wrote it or a robot wrote it. I was laughing with my wife saying, it's impossible, man. There's no way they have some means of doing that.
Well, what we're seeing is that Google is showing more and more pages as crawled but not indexed.
Oh yeah.
Or discovered but not indexed. Okay. So I think there is going to become such a proliferation of content that Google may not be able to keep up.
Wow. I never thought about that. Wow. Okay, that brings me to my next question then. How do you go about getting content indexed in that situation for a client or a project?
So then it becomes a going back a little bit to technical SEO, right? What do you need to prune content on your site? Is it valuable? Should Google index it? Right?
Okay,
is it? There's the first thing to ask. Can we elevate it? Then we start looking at EAT. Is this content valuable? Have you if you've sourced information, did you put, this like an old thesis paper, did you put in your references and your sources?
Yeah.
Is it well organized? So first of all, should it be indexed?
Yeah.
2, is the rest of your site of value as well, so that you're getting the things there in the way that your structure is, or you're in a silo structure, or how are you getting that content placed that Google should find it? Are they having to crawl through a bunch of other crap to get to it?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things that I think, as everything has unintended consequences. As SEO, if we're pushing out this much content, and there's a lot of other maybe agencies or unethical companies not pushing out way more content than they should, then I think we've all got to look at what that's doing with unintended consequences, and then react so that we're making our clients served best. Yeah,
that's some awesome advice. Hey, what's a common myth about SEO that you're tired of hearing about?
I think probably the thing that I hate hearing about the most is that you have to be on page 1 to be successful.
Oh yeah.
I think that what we're learning now is, again, I touched on it earlier. Search is more than just Google. We're seeing people migrate to other search engines. We're seeing migrate to other channels and resources of information. There's so much out there now.
Oh, wow.
And I'm still staying within the realm of search. I'm not even talking about, other channels of social but just in the realm of search. There's so much information out there in so many different ways that you don't have to be on page 1 for your top terms.
So do you mean, for instance, sites search like Quora? People searching on there for information?
I love Quora. But,
you don't have to be on the top page of Google. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you can submit your content on other sites. If you're seeing that the top sites are some kind of an aggregator on page 1, do you need to be on WebMD or Forbes? Which, let's not talk about Forbes. That's not a good example.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
But if there's so many other sites that you're never going to reach page 1, then where else are people looking for that same information, and what else are they comparing for? Right? Yeah. Are they looking at podcasts? Are they looking on transcripts from YouTube? So there's so many different places that people are trying to absorb information that it's not just page 1 of Google.
No, it's not. Because let's be frank, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not just the page 1 of the SERP. And then, people search on Twitter for stuff. They search on Facebook for stuff. They search. Yeah, now that you got me thinking, there's probably lots of places they search. Even
TripAdvisor,
Pinterest. TripAdvisor, Yelp.
Again. Mm-hmm.
Home Advisor.
So all the different places that we might go to, forums, let's not forget Reddit or any of those things. That's again, small but passionate group as well. Well, I shouldn't even say small; they're huge. So there's so many different places that I think the myth that I hear in SEO so often is, well, we've got to rank on page 1 for these 5 phrases, and I'm so tired of people saying, how much will it cost to get this? And it's like, it's not even a phrase anymore. They say word. I moved to phrase a while ago. Now it's topic.
Yeah.
We can't even, we really need to move away from keywords and really just educate our clients to be thinking about topics.
Yeah. And creating content to dominate those topics. I would say
on multiple channels.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, have you ever seen a website get penalized by Google for using black hat SEO techniques?
We've recovered a couple.
Yeah.
So I've had clients come to me, especially you mentioned, Panda and Penguin back in the day.
Yeah.
So that we've had, yes, I've seen clients get penalized by way too much heavy copy and unfortunate backlinks and
over optimization
and over optimization. And so we actually had to maintain the domain, but we really, most of the times we have to rebuild the content, rebuild the site and then resubmit. And we've been successful at that. I've tried it with kind of the same site, same theme, just kind of requesting some minor changes. It's usually by the time Google actually penalizes it, it needs a complete overhaul.
Yeah. So you really rebuilt the whole thing from scratch. So you didn't have to switch them to a new domain. You just essentially built the whole site from scratch, which is an investment.
We were able to maintain domains. Yeah, it's still an investment. And if it's a business objective, then that's for many clients, that's a small investment, when they look at their book of business.
Yeah, small price to pay for, because if you think about their branding, I mean, thinking of all that money to redo a new domain, and even if those social media assets are available to even acquire and various other things, and your reputation and people know your brand. Yeah, I bet you it's way less expensive.
It's way less expensive, and it's the getting someone to go squeaky clean is easy. Most of the time, the business owner didn't even realize or understand why they were penalized. It was the agency doing something that promised one thing, but they executed it a different way. Is more often what I found. So, once they understand, and we find that our best client, we're usually about their 3rd or 4th agency.
Oh, wow.
They've gone through a couple to learn what digital marketing can and can't do for them, what to expect in that work process, maybe what to expect in the value of their investment. The first one, if we're their first agency, we love working with startups, but sometimes they have different expectations. And by the time they get to about their 3rd agency, clients that stay with us for 10 years, I've had
awesome.
come from the previous agency, all the way through to now. So
that's awesome.
Penalties are tough. But that's one of the reasons I named the agency White Hat Ops is, we're in the middle of a little bit of rebranding, but we've always been sustainable and ethical. We've taken a white hat approach to everything. Doesn't mean I don't study black or gray to understand what's going on or working, but our clients are business and have that investment in their brand, and they can't afford anything less than white hat.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you communicate to them that it is a long-term investment. This isn't a get traffic quick scheme or a get rich quick scheme. Like, you got to be willing to invest the time and money into properly building your website, generating great content, continuing to generate great content, and staying on top of that. Because what other way is there? Like, you could try doing some spammy, I don't even look at it anymore.
Right.
But some spammy things, but like at the end of the day, it's probably going to hurt you.
There was a great ad campaign many years ago with one of the office supply companies, and they had the easy button, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell clients, I said, there is no easy button in SEO, right? Yep. To really do it right, there's you just kind of have to put in the work, and there is a process. Yes, sometimes it can be faster than others. How aggressive do you want to be? You can definitely be aggressive, but that doesn't mean you have to do it black or gray hat. You can be aggressive even with white hat strategies.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of how fast do you need to grow and what that investment looks like.
Yeah. Hey, there are so many questions we didn't cover and so many other topics that we could talk about, but I see our time is coming to an end. Would you be willing to come back on the show?
I would love to. This has been fun. Great. I'm obviously passionate about digital marketing and where we're all headed and how entrepreneurs can make this a successful career for their own lives. It's changed my life.
That's awesome. Hey, where can viewers learn more about you if they want to? Online.
We are, thank you for asking. We are White Hat Ops, coming from a background again of White Hat and operations to help our companies. So whitehat-ops.com.
Whitehat-ops.com is where they can learn more about you.
Correct.
Fantastic. Hey, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I do want to get you back again because I had more questions to ask, but we've run out of time. And I'd like to have you back on and we'll talk about some other things, get into analytics and PPC and the whole correlation between those things and how you use those to further help your clients. If you would be so kind to join us again, that'd be awesome.
Matt, I saw your eyes light up. I'll definitely come back and I'm going to sneak in a couple of questions for you.
Oh, sure. Okay. No problem. I'm just going to turn the recording off. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Bye-bye.